Hello, my beautiful internet friends. Welcome back to my channel. It's Shar, and today we are doing a library tour. I will tell you that I also recorded this video before, but I didn't like the audio quality. So hopefully with this little mic that I have on me, the audio quality is at least somewhat okay. But without further ado, let me walk you through the bookshelves behind me, and then I'll take you to the living room to explore the brown bookshelf that you see in some of my videos. Hi. It's going to be hard to show you this because this is the tallest my tripod gets. So up here is all of my special editions. So I'm going to walk you through each one. If I skip a certain book and you're wondering why, it's because that book was published by St. Martin's Press. And yes, I'm still actively boycotting St. Martin's Press as part of the SMP boycott. If you don't know why we're boycotting St. Martin's Press, then I'm going to leave information in the description down below. Let me walk you through my top shelf. Ignore Taylor. She and I are beefing right now, okay? Like, we're not on good terms. These are my special editions. The majority of the books up here I did get from Fairy Loot, Illuma Crate. Those are the only ones that I've had, Fairy Loot and Illuma Crate. I did ultimately cancel both of those subscriptions, but I'll tell you fully why in a later video. So to start with, ones with plain edges, I honestly don't remember 9 times out of 10 which one they are because it's exactly the same. I'm pretty certain that this one here is, yeah, Book of Night by Holly Black. And then right next to it is City of Dusk. And this is a super chunky book. I keep all of my special editions together. I'm not going to walk you through every single book that's on my shelves, but I will point out ones that I think are pretty or have like a specific story behind them. For example, this one is a beautiful book. This is The Sun and the Void. However, I DNF'd this book pretty early on, specifically because I was just kind of bored and really not interested in the story. And that truly is one of the downfalls of these kind of special edition book boxes. You will on the occasion get a book that you're interested in. And yes, the books are beautiful, but you also often get books that you have no interest in whatsoever. And now I'm like, what do I want with a special edition of this book? I hold on to it because, hello, she's stunning. But because I'm hoping that if I try to read this book again in a different mood, it's going to work for me better. Right next to it is my special edition of Babel by R.F. Kuang. This is honestly one of the most beautiful books I have on my entire shelf. Like, she's absolutely stunning. Unfortunately, I've DNF'd this book about 6 different times. I'm 70% of the way through, and I have been for a long time, but I genuinely just do not care. I hold on to it again because I hope that one day I'm going to really enjoy it. I think I might ultimately sell this book. This is Her Majesty's Royal Coven. Daughter of the Moon Goddess is absolutely beautiful. Spells for Forgetting is a book that in recent years I've had so much more interest in getting into. I would bring you closer, but that's not really going to help you because you would get cut off from the rest of the shelf. And then these are all of my other special editions. This one is a brand new release, and this is actually the first run sprayed edges. You can get this from anyone that is selling books, any bookseller, you're able to purchase this book. It goes on sale quite often. And I will tell you, I've seen people resell this book for a lot more than it's currently selling for. And I'm going to tell you, don't fucking fall for that because you can buy this right now at its normal price. It does not cost more. And then all of the other books on here, Belladonna, I still really have a strong interest in reading. And then we can move on to the shelf down here. These are all fantasies. Starling House by Alex E. Harrow. She's so pretty. It's the only book that has like this clear translucent cover, which I'm obsessed with. And I did not purchase it as part of a subscription box because by that point I had canceled. But what Illuma Crate often does, I believe this is Illuma Crate, yeah. What they often do is they'll sell extras of the books where you don't need a subscription. You can just go to their website and purchase. And that's what I did. Moving on to fantasies. Fantasy that I also have a special edition of that I'm obsessed with. Master of Crows by Grace Draven. If you're new here, I love Grace Draven. I've read Radiance, Eidolon, and Entreat Me. Adored all of those books. I stand by that no one writes romance like Grace Draven writes romance, specifically fantasy romance with a historical vibe that has very strong soulmate energy. So I'm really excited for this book. In the back, it's kind of hard to see, so I'll get a little bit closer. You can see all of the details of the story. I don't know when I'm going to have time to read this just because my TBR is pretty set for the next few weeks, but I will find time to read this. Now, Lore of the Wilds, I've heard very interesting things about. I heard that it's like pretty mid, but honestly, I don't really care. This is a black fae story written by a black author. So of course, I'm going to fucking read this book. And even if it's mid, so what? I'm really looking forward to this. I think it's about a woman who like works at a library and ends up working with two fae. I believe one of the fae here is the prince. So I'm looking forward to reading this. And she also has such beautiful like lettering. If you can see, the colors kind of shift as I move the book. What I have here is Elle. Legally Blonde. I don't have that many pop sockets. I do from like when I used to be into pop sockets, but I only picked this one up because it's special. It's a collector's edition. She's there in her bunny suit, and also it was only $5. So Elle sits up here with my rest of my fantasy books. So we can move down to the shelf below it, which I will zoom you in for, which is my romances and fantasy spillover. Now you and I, we're real up close and personal, and I won't go this way because this is a separate shelf. So we'll talk about the narrow shelf here later on. So these are my romances. This here is the spillover for things that are like speculative or fantasy. The Sunbury Trials, the book that I'm really looking forward to reading. The Sunbury Trials is absolutely beautiful with all of the gold. This is often pitched as like, I think I've heard it described as the Hunger Games, but if they were gods. And I'll be looking forward to reading that potentially in June when my TBR is a little bit more freed up. Out there is a collection of short stories that are speculative and very bizarre. I know a lot of people love it, but I'm particularly happy because I found this book for $1. And then we have my stack of romances, specifically historical romances, which starts to divide for where my romance shelf starts. The historical romances here because I very much got into my romance era in 2024. I've largely been reading romances. These are all of my historicals. And the great thing about historicals is that they're really inexpensively priced. Like, yes, they can get pricey, but you can also often find them at like thrift stores or used bookstores for less than $1. So I have all of these. Like, again, The Magic is a book that so many people love. I can tell that whoever had this before really loved it as well, but I picked that up for about 50 cents. So these are my historicals that I'm really excited to read, especially Beverly Jenkins, which will be my first Beverly Jenkins, and Mary in Haste, which is one that I'm really looking forward to and have mentioned multiple times on my channel. We have a sapphic romance, a sapphic romance. This is I don't know if I would call this a romance. It's largely about grief, but also the way that this woman sleeps with a lot of different people. So this is by a non-binary author. How to End a Love Story. You've seen it in my most recent haul. Serpentine Valentine is also a sapphic story. This is a Medusa retelling, and it's also independently published, which I'm really happy about because I really want to focus on reading more indie published books and getting more indie published books on my shelf. We have a few romances as well. This is one that I picked up recently when I was going secondhand book shopping, as I often do. She was pricey at $10, but it's still less than what it sells for full price. And this is a book that I had on KU, but I honestly think I'm going to love it. It looks like it's a romance between a hockey player and a gamer. Yeah, grumpy hockey player meets sunshine gamer. And that just sounds like it's so, so good. So when I saw that it was on sale, which is not common that I see independently published books at used bookstores, I of course picked it up. Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute. I am 50% of the way through and DNF just because it wasn't specifically working for me, but I didn't unhaul it because I think I do want to try again and really get into like that YA mindset. Night Shift is such a beautiful book. It's a story, it's a sports romance about a girl who works at her college library. And if you don't know, I also worked at my college library for almost all 4 years that I was there. So when I recognized what this was about, not only was the cover beautiful, but I was very excited. And this is also published by Wattpad, which was the first time I learned that Wattpad publishes books. Check and Mate has a fun story as well, because one of the hobbies that I picked up this year, I rotate through hobbies all year round. I need creative outlets. That's just who I am as a person. And Check and Mate is the first book, one of the first books that I attempted to make my own custom sprayed edges for. I'll show you here and here, but then I'll also show you like where I kind of fucked up on it, because I think the colors are too similar. If you can't tell what those are, they're chess pieces, but the colors are way too similar. And I use too thick of a layer of paint, but it's my book, so I don't mind it. It's still very much readable. The colors don't bleed into the pages. So it is what it is. My special edition of Check and Me. And then I have a candle here from Novel Wicks, which is a small business that does like bookish themed candles. However, I believe this one is like ACOTAR themed, which I really, really dislike. The only reason I got this candle was because of the smell. I'm opening this as if you could fucking smell it. You can't. It's coconut iris and worn leather, and that just sits up there. Right. These are my thrillers, my scary books. Nothing here is really worth pointing out to you. I think the cover of My Best Friend's Exorcism is quite beautiful. I will show you, but I'll disclaim that I picked this up at a really old thrift store where it was shoved under so many things. It was less than $1, but she do be hella damaged. And that was okay with me, but I think it has such a gorgeous cover. Then a book that I'm really excited to read is 56 Days, because I read another book by Catherine Ryan Howard and I did really, really like this one. So I have high hopes for this. Ignore the stickers. I did not buy it from either of those stores. I get most of my books secondhand, so I'm looking forward to reading this one. And then the only thing I'll say about the books on this shelf is that these are the books that have been on my TBR the longest. I was very much in like a thriller, mystery kind of mindset when I first got into reading. I'm gradually moving more towards romance, but I still really love this genre. I just have to be in the right mood to read it. And then here is like my little TBR basket. These are where I put the books that I'm like, if there's ever a time where I don't know what I want to read, I have this basket of my owned books that I can pull from. I won't show you everything in here, but I'll tell you books that are in here. Things like The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. We have All Roads Lead Here by Mariana Zapata. We have Hench, and then we have a few classic historical romances, including The Secret by Julie Garwood. Okay, and I'll keep you down here for the last two shelves on my bookshelf. So this is, again, more thrillers and horror. Last House on Needless Street, this one right here, I am really looking forward to reading, but I know that it's kind of a doozy mentally, like trying to grasp what's happening. Sign Here is a book that I'm really excited about, but sometimes it generally pisses me the fuck off because I bought this on Independent Bookstore Day and it was in the used section and they charged me $30 for it. Me being non-confrontational and a fucking idiot, paid $30 for it, but it's obscene because Book of the Month books retail for $17. Yeah, I paid twice as much. So The Island is one that I have been eagerly anticipating, but I've been scared to read this one, specifically because I know that it's about this family that is being hunted in an island in Australia. There's a lot of meaning to this story, but harm to children is a huge trigger for me, so being mindful of that one. Well, I can't even fucking tell you how excited I was to see Wrong Place, Wrong Time at my local thrift store for literally, this has $2.49. It was 75% off, $2.49. So I will be reading this one and know that the audiobook is also on Everend. So if I want the companion to that, like I will. Then this little stack of books here are just like my blue and purple books. Just because I wanted a stack of blue and purple books. The book that I want to show you on here is Mother Thing, because yes, I am reading Mother Thing, but also this cover is so pretty. I genuinely love this cover so much. And then Nothing to See Here is a story of children who spontaneously combust. And then we have two YA like thrillers. I still think I'm going to really like this, but I've just been putting it off. But I think that this cover is also quite nice. And if we come to the last shelf on the bottom, you'll see that it's a combination of a number of things. To be honest with y'all, this is just my spillover shelf. It's everything that I couldn't fit in anywhere else. So I am doing several vlogs at once to try to read down some of the books here on my physical shelf, just because I use my library a lot and I love my library, but I also need to read some of the books that I own. So that's everything that's spillover. The standouts to me here are The Kiss Countdown, which is a story about an astronaut and an event planner. I don't often read astronaut romances, so I'm very excited for that. The Devil Comes Courting by Courtney Milan. I'm very excited to read that one. I really love historical romances, but I'm also aiming to diversify the kind of historical romances that I read because they don't all have to be white and set in England. Next to You by Hannah Bonham Young is something that I've seen Hannah promoting on her book talk, which I've really wanted to read. It's a story about two people who are renovating like a school bus. But I know that the twist to the story, or at least what like sold me, is that Hannah said that if you liked Bo from Out on a Limb, you would love the main character in Next to You. So I'm looking forward to that one. And then I have The Witch King as well, which I own the audiobook for, but this book was about $1. And it is a story of a trans boy in a fae world, and he's arranged to be married to like the fae king. So I think it's going to be a really interesting read. And then Hide and Seeker is also one that I think might be super fun for summer week. Excuse me if I sound out of breath. I am, and it's because I've been talking for 20 minutes straight. Okay, I'm not going to show you the bottom shelf of this bookshelf just because that's where I put the books that I'm potentially thinking of unhauling, but also I have some SJM books down there because when I first got into booktube and book talk, I kept seeing her everywhere. So I picked up a book of hers for like a challenge, and then I picked up Throne of Glass. But the more I learned about this author, the more I'm just like, ick, and I really don't want to promote them on this channel. So instead, let me show you this shelf. So this is my shelf of, I guess, spillovers. These are also books that I've had for a very long time. Some of them were books that I got as like a bonus book in a book subscription box. And a lot of these are books that were some of the first books that I purchased at my local thrift store. Examples through here, these are newer editions. This one she's beat up, but I think has such a fun story because when I was on vacation in Miami, I do have a vlog of me on vacation in Miami on my channel. I was speaking with this woman by the pool and she was reading this book, and I was asking her like, oh, what do you think? I've been interested in like reading that author before. I actually saw this book at the bookstore and was going to purchase it. Like, how do you like it? And she's like, you know what? I'm actually almost done with it. I really like it. She was Filipino herself, so she really enjoyed the representation in the book, but that once she finished it, I was more than welcome to have it. So she actually gave that to me as soon as she finished it. So I really love the story behind why I have this book, even though she's a little bit beat up because it was a beach and poolside read, so a little bit of water damage. And this shelf is my shelf of wrapped books. I'm doing a series on my channel, and I have been for a little while, of like wheel spinner decides my TBR. And what that is that I have a wheel of like random challenges, and then I spin that wheel, and that challenge decides how I'm going to pick my TBR for the week. One of the options on there is wrapped books. So these are my wrapped books. They are numbered, and I have a spreadsheet of which book is which, just so I can keep track of it if I'm ever hunting that down. But I don't ever look at that spreadsheet. I really want to do wrapped books again, but I don't control the wheel, so I don't know what the challenge would be, but I'm thinking I could maybe just do a video where it's like wrapped books picks what I read without the wheel. We shall see. So not much to see here. That's what it is. All right. And then this is my shelf of YA. I'll tell you, most of this narrow shelf is like YA, middle grade, and the oldest books on my TBR. This is the first book that I ever attempted to paint. I've moved on to like spraying edges, but this is a book that I hand painted. I think I did an okay job for my first ever attempt at this. I'll pull you back a little bit. He's cute, but I didn't love the first part of Wilder Girls that I read, but to be fair, I was also a completely different like reader in what I looked for. And this is a sapphic kind of speculative story, so I think I could enjoy it. M.G. Young is a book that I am really looking forward to reading. I know it's a story about a woman who works at a convenience store in Korea, but also talks a lot about misogyny and sexism and the way that she has to navigate her life within that context in Korea. I will tell you, I did read Girl Serpent Thorn. It was okay. The only reason I haven't unhauled it is, one, I think the cover is beautiful. I'm not going to show you because this bookshelf, she really be having no wiggle room. But the thing that I didn't love here is that the sapphic romance here felt rushed. I love that the two women ended up together, but the love interest for a main female character, the girl who's poisonous, she gets almost no airtime at all, and the male character gets the most development of the two potential love interests. So when they came together, it felt rushed and forced because they had almost not interacted at all. So I didn't love that aspect of it. And these are the two editions that you've heard me speak about on my channel, because they are the only two books that I purchased, read months later, and realized that they were badly printed. I'm talking blurred words. The printer was definitely running out of ink whenever it printed this. It's just really, really, really bad, and I think contributed to my dislike of these books. I already did a second chance series for the Thursday Murder Club, so if you want to see that, we'll have it linked somewhere for you. And then I'm going to do one for Veronica Speedwell. These are some more historical romances. Destiny's Embrace by Beverly Jenkins, and then I'll show you the final shelf on this little narrow bookshelf. Okay, and this is my middle grade shelf and some of my spillovers. Briarwick is another candle company that does bookish candles. They're a small business, and I do really like their candles. I think they smell very, very nice. These are Goosebump books. I was a Goosebumps kid through and through, so nostalgia reasons prompted me to pick these two up, but also I found Slappy really scary, and I loved Horrorland. I read it when it first came out. Like, I was a 90s baby. I was a 90s kid. I read this in the early 2000s. So I think these are newer editions of the book, so I'm excited to get back into that world. It would be a fun, quick read during something like Summerween. Camp Scare, I only picked up because it's by Delilah S. Dawson. Delilah S. Dawson has a very wide backlist. She seems to write a little bit of everything, including, I believe, Star Wars based books. So I picked this one up. Amari and the Night Brothers, I'm really looking forward to reading. I picked up the entire set of the Morgan Crow series for $20. And this is a story about a girl, I believe, who is cursed in some way or another and gets swept away to some world. You know what? Don't take that summary at face value, because I could straight up be fucking lying to you. I don't know. I have my Julie Garwood, The Bride, which I'm so excited to read. And then I have a couple of more historical romances, but the one that I'm really looking forward to is this one by Nora Roberts. This is Chasing Fire, and if you can't see what's on the cover, it's a fire jumper. I did not know what a fire jumper was, but during like forest fires or massive fires, they are firefighters who fight that from the air, and they jump out of planes to put out the fire in that area. And that's what a fire jumper is. This is a suspenseful romance about this. I saw this on Jess's channel from Peace Love Books. I know she only gave it like 3 stars. It was okay, but I still really want to read it. And again, I found it at the thrift store for very, very little money. I'm talking less than $1. And then I won't show you the top shelf, the shelf that's above here. One, because I keep pictures of my family up there and I don't show you all my family, but 2, because I have the 1989 album up there, and Taylor and I are not on good terms right now. That's that. I'm going to show you my living room bookshelf. So this angle is something like you're vaguely familiar with. This is my living room bookshelf. We're in a corner of my living room, and this is where I keep the books that I've read and loved, as well as some books that are higher on my priority TBR. So I keep them in the living room because I spend all day in the living room, and I force myself to look at them and remind myself to read them. So I'm going to walk you through each one of the shelves on my bookshelf and show you what I've got. So this top shelf that you see are all of the special editions that I've read and loved, as well as my all-time favorite books. So of course, you're seeing It's Just Grace Draven up there, as well as S.T. Gibson with A Dowry of Blood. A book that I'm most excited to own is this one. It's the indie published version of A Dowry of Blood, the original one. And you cannot find this anywhere. You can see that I annotated the absolute shit out of this because I love this book so much, but it's definitely one of my prized bookish possessions. I will be doing a video on my channel walking you through like the most beautiful books on my shelves, but you can see some of them now. The one with the mountains and the little alien spaceship, that's Ice Planet Barbarians. IPB is what got me into my sci-fi monster romance era. I absolutely love IPB. So of course I have it on my shelf. The one with the mushrooms is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairy. Wells Bell is Fangirl Down. Next to it is The Jasad Heir, which is a really fun fantasy. I don't think it's a masterpiece, but I do really like The Jasad Heir. And then we have, I always want to say Two Twisted Crowns. That's not what it is. It's One Dark Window. And I liked One Dark Window. It was a 4-star read for me, but I'll decide what I want to do with that book and if I eventually move it off of this shelf. And then there's Gallant by V.E. Schwab, which I know is a book that a lot of people don't love. It's because it reads younger than people thought that it would. And if people have read V.E. Schwab before, I think their expectations were set differently. But this was my first ever V.E. Schwab, and I really loved this book. It's exactly the kind of horror that I would enjoy, with the fantastical elements as well as the gothic atmosphere. And if I move you down a little bit, next to it is just a plant and a candle, and then I have this little banner thing which I got in a Fairy Loot subscription, and it's all the pins that I've gotten from like book subscriptions or book purchases. I have not purchased any pin on my own. They've always been accompanied by something, but I do really like them. I just don't know what I'd do with them. So they sit on here and they hang on the side of my shelf. Speaking of IPB, it's my Ice Planet candle, and then I have the little gingerbread plant holder thing, which I never removed from my shelf after Christmas. Yes, it is almost June. And these are my favorite romances. So most of these are contemporary romances, and you can see that the majority of them have actually been published by Avon or Berkeley, which I only realized upon looking at this shelf. Yes, I own every Ali Hazelwood. I loved every single book, and then the 7-Year Slip was my favorite book of last year. It sits on my all-time favorite bookshelf. While We Were Dating by Jasmine Guillory, I'm absolutely obsessed with. This is a story about an actress who is struggling with anxiety and had to take a break from her career, but now she's back and she's vying for an Oscar, and she's in as many things as possible, including this commercial where she ends up working for an advertising like manager, and their chemistry is instant. They start hooking up, and then they start fake dating. Eventually, this shelf will be entirely contemporary romances, but on here are also some horrors. This is just a graphic novel, but I would say it's definitely like more paranormal romance. It's a story about a werewolf and a vampire who fell in love. I've read this book 6 times. I do not reread books. It is such a quick read, so I think that should tell you how much I love it. We have some scarier books. This is more of like a gothic, and The Sundown Motel is a paranormal ghost story set at a motel in New York. Welcome to my red combination of things. You should see me in a crown. Definitely stands out. But this basket is the basket of my library books. So any physical library book that I have checked out goes into this basket. I currently have 3. I have Where the Dark Stands Still. Actually, I have 4. So a few books in there. Runtime by Catherine Ryan Howard, which I really, really enjoyed. I thought it was a lot of fun. I think I ultimately gave it like 3.75 stars. As I've disclaimed before on my channel, a 4-star book does not mean that I like dislike that book. And a 4-star book can still be an all-time favorite. It's just recognizing that it wasn't the perfect book for me, but there were a lot of elements there that I loved more than I disliked. Some of these are controversial picks because people don't like them. For example, The Last Word, or The House Across the Lake, or The Writing Retreat. I like campy horror. Like, I don't know what you want me to tell you. I like campy thrillers. I like campy horrors. Does it get weird? Is it ridiculous? Are we venturing into silly, goofy times? Then I'm probably going to like this. This I surprisingly really did enjoy. I think it also leans into like that campy territory. You Should See Me in a Crown is a sapphic high school like YA romance. I did really like this specifically because of the dynamics between the 2 characters and the deeper conversations being had here about our main female character, who is a young Black girl, and her desire to be prom queen, to win a scholarship, and all of the racism that she encounters in her small town. The Burning Girls by C.J. Tudor, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, which is one of my favorite YA like mystery series. My favorite book in this series, I will continue to unapologetically state, is As Good as Dead, which I know people say they didn't like. They didn't like where it went, but it went somewhere that I really appreciated. And I think that me telling you I like campy stories that go off the rail tells you why I really liked As Good as Dead. Sorcery of Thorns is a fae story. It's one of the first fae stories that I ever read, and I did really, really love that one. Then we have Real. I mentioned when I did a haul recently that I really wanted to own a copy of Raybearer because I love this duology, but I read it as a library book, and I usually can't bring myself to purchase a book that I've already read at full price unless it's a special edition. But because I love this book so much, I actually went to the thrift store a few days after I filmed that video, and I saw that they had this book on sale for 47 cents. 47 cents. So my request was answered, And then I have Percy Jackson, which I actually bought for my nephew, but he had a copy of it already, but that's fine by me. I was a PJO kid through and through. I absolutely adore the series and I really love Percy. So we can move to the next shelf. Welcome to my chaotic messiness. We have a box of stickers, a candle, a box of annotation supplies, and an air freshener. But next to all of that are some of the newer editions of books that I acquired. The Last Devil to Die and Horrid are the newest books to my collection. These are books that I've read and really loved. Any book that you see on this shelf, if I tell you I've read it, the reason I keep it is because I loved it and I have an intention to reread it many times in the future. The oldest book on my shelf that you are looking at right now is the Atla comics, because I was also an Avatar: The Last Airbender kid. I don't think a lot of people know, but the series does continue after the TV show ends. It continues via the comic. Then the only other manga on this shelf are Tokyo Ghoul and Spy Family Volume 1. Everything else are romances. The Dead Romantics you can see is much lower than the 7 Year Slip. I like the Dead Romantics. It wasn't my favorite. Quite honestly, I would have unhauled it already, but I annotated it, so I keep it. It has all of my notes in it, and I will reread it. The Woman in Cabin 10 is a thriller that I had so much fun with and really enjoy. Then I have some middle grade horror. Squad is a book with such a beautiful cover. I've got to show you it. Squad by Maggie Dakota Hall. And this is a story, graphic novel about man-eating werewolves in high school. Love Radio is a great YA Black romance, and it covers a lot of heavier topics, so I would encourage you to be mindful of that and look at the content warnings when you get into that. And that's the final book on the shelf that I've read. So The Martian by Andy Weir is a book that I'm really excited about. It's about a man on Mars, and it's like a fight for survival. He's one of the first humans there, but the rest of his crew are forced to escape, and now he has to battle the elements. I really loved Project Hail Mary, which is why I have this. Then I have some 2024 new releases like Funny Story, Only and Forever by Chloe Leese, and then Wild Love by Elsie Silver, and then Royal Holiday is another book by Jasmine Guillory. And the final shelf that you see on this bookshelf in my living room, you can see that it backs right into the chair that I sit on, which is fine. I can still easily access those books. It's just they're sitting in the shadows, which is maybe good for them for not getting sunbleed. I have Love Boat Taipei. I have Concrete Rose, Frankly in Love, a few other books I picked up very early on in my reading journal. The book that you're seeing, the middle grade one, The House on Hoarder Hill, that's actually a book that I was reading with my nephew when he was about 5 years old, so quite a few years ago now, but it scared him, so we stopped reading it. And now I have to find the desire to continue with this middle grade story myself. There's a few other books here that I'm interested in. Again, I'm not discussing any books published by St. Martin's Press. The only other ones that stand out to me are the newer editions of the books that just joined my shelf, so things like Just for the Summer, Do Your Worst. Jurassic Park is a book that I'm so looking forward to reading. I would consider this a modern classic. I loved the Jurassic Park movies as a kid, even as an adult. I really loved dinosaurs as a kid. I would sit at home and watch dinosaur documentaries on Discovery. Kind of loved dinosaurs. Like, I was dino obsessed. I've heard nothing but positive things about this book, so I'm really looking forward to reading the book that inspired the movie series. And then I have some books that I recently added to my TBR, as well as some books that are a little bit older. All the way up to Daisy Jones and the Six. Those are books that I recently added to my physical TBR. All of these books I purchased at the thrift store for less than $1 each. On Rotation is one that I'm specifically excited for because I know that it is a Black romance, and it is following a woman who's a doctor and has been described as if Grey's Anatomy meant something else. I never watched Grey's Anatomy, but that's neither here nor there. So that's it, besties. That brings us to the end of this video. Those are my bookshelves. I do technically have one more bookshelf that's like on the side, but I'm not going to show you that. Those are my self-help books, the oldest books on my TBR, and mostly it's books that I'm unhauling. So that's why I'm not going to show it to you. It's messy and chaotic because most of the books on that shelf do leave pretty soon after. As always, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you did enjoy it, and I'm going to see you in my next video. Bye!